And welcome once again to the AskOkey podcast. If you're new here, my name's Pete, and I have the Proff with me, as always, for an hour, or almost an hour, of sartorial wisdom and various other conversations that we have along the way. Getting started, Proff, you posted a reel this week about the tailored man, which drew its fair share of pretty drastic feedback, I think. Now, some people think that tailored means narrow, or tailored means, shall we say, what they used to call fitted. What does tailored mean in the context of the tailored man?
Well, thank you, Pete, and always a pleasure to be back in studio with you.
Indeed. Glad to hear it.
But directly to your question, both terms, tailored and fitted, actually are misused, very often misused, because, fitted doesn't necessarily mean narrow either.
No, indeed.
Fitted means something is fitted properly. Think about it in engineering terms. When you fit a structure, it just means that it suits the opposite, or sort of it's well fitted.
Mm-hmm.
So fit has nothing to do, or fitted, the term had nothing to do with the style, as it were, of the garment.
Yes.
It just means that it's well tailored. Same as tailored. Tailored means it's been properly tailored. It doesn't refer to any specific style per se. So in my own reading of it, when folks on the comment section throw around these words such as fitted and tailored, these are terms that they pick up on the internet, usually on social media.
Right.
And I think they're marketing terms.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the charlatans, of course, out there use these terms to promote their wares, as it were.
Yes,
and so this whole idea of, well, it's fitted, it just sounds nice.
Yes.
And as you know, the skinny look has been sort of in mainstream for the last decade or thereabout. And so when you see a lot of these charlatans, so to speak, marketing their wares and using words such as fitted and tailored to promote them, the average person sees these things and naturally, when they think fitted or tailored, that is what they picture.
Yes. So tailored actually means it's been made by a tailor. That's all it means.
That's it. It makes no reference whatsoever to the style.
No, it shouldn't. You can obviously have off the rack things that have been tailored in the sense that you took it to somebody and he made some alterations.
Well, but even off the rack garments are tailored, right?
In a sense, yes.
I mean,
yes.
They're tailored because they went through the hands of a tailor. Or some sort of tailoring process.
Right. Yes. So there you have it, folks. A tailored man is a man who wears tailored clothes. Clothes are tailored if they're made by a tailor. It's as dull and as matter of fact as that, I think. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Prof, for clarifying. And of course, if you want to send comments disagreeing, be our guest. That's what we're here for. Now, speaking of disagreements, couple of podcasts ago, you had on a suit with a peak lapel on a single-breasted jacket, and David Johnot 8548 seems to disagree with this and says, if I understood correctly, it's not quite right. Is it? Or were you pushing the boundaries, Prof? Were you pushing the boundaries of style there?
Well, look, as to borrow one of your favorite terms, everyone on the internet is an expert.
Yes.
Once you log onto Instagram or some other social,
yes.
You become automatically
yes.
The lords of expertise. They bestow upon you this.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is absolute nonsense. It took us a while to introduce the model because for me, it is one of those. Shall I say? It's an elegant look, but it's more dressy.
Right.
It's more dressy. So, for instance, it's not something I would wear to the office.
Right. Okay.
So it's not something I would wear for business or to the office. It is worn. A lot of folks wear it today in the contemporary environment. They wear it to the office, such as the movie we were referring to, the series Suits.
Suits, yes.
So they're worn to the office today, but I see them as a little bit more dressy. Anything with a peak lapel, such as the double-breasted, of course, I generally see as more dressy. But single-breasted peak lapel suits have been worn forever. I mean, they've been worn for decades and decades. And they are as classic as they come. So I beg to differ with the honorable gentleman.
There you go. I suppose it partly depends on the shape of the lapel, because it might look a little bit exaggerated if the lapel was, say, too wide or too narrow. It might look a little odd. And I suppose you also want to be careful, because if the peak isn't structured correctly, it looks a little floppy. It can get a little bit floppy. It has to be well made.
Well, I mean,
keep its shape.
There we're talking about stylistic choices, but the point being the idea of a peak lapel suit being incorrect is absolute nonsense. It's been worn it's been worn forever, as long as the lounge suit has been around. It's been worn. It's just like everything else. There's a place and an occasion for it. I would not wear it as a day-to-day office suit or as a business suit. However, for a smart evening suit, absolutely, a smart evening suit or a suit for a formal event. Say, for instance, you're going to a wedding and you're not quite in the mood to push out the boat and go the whole hog and wear a morning dress, for instance.
Well, or if you know that nobody else is going to be wearing morning dress.
Or exactly, if you don't want to stand out. A peak lapel, a dark navy or charcoal peak lapel suit would just be an absolute classic for a formal event such as a wedding.
It would.
Yes.
Sober, restrained, but with a little dash, as
absolutely. And it also lends itself, in my own view, to a vest. Better than the notch lapel. When I say a vest, such as like an odd vest. So if you want to dress it up a little bit with an odd vest. So it's sort of one of those things where it's a bridge to the morning dress, in my view. For daytime formal wear. So because it's the morning dress, of course, is a single-breasted peak lapel coat, just long with a tail. So I think it has its place. It's just not, for me, it's not an everyday office suit.
Indeed. Now, that leads us to the vest, to the waistcoat. When you talk about the odd vest or the odd waistcoat, is there any particular rules or conventions about the color? I mean, you were saying if you have a charcoal gray peak lapel, say, flannel suit, which you could have, what sort of color of odd vest would you recommend?
Well, personally, I like to keep sort of the grays and blues and just sort of the more dressy colors together. And then, it depends. I mean, it depends on the occasion. If it's a sober occasion, then I would probably go for something a little bit more sober, such as dove gray.
Okay. So
or something in
keep it as a gray, though.
Keep it gray. Certainly gray. If it's something a bit more colorful, like a wedding, you might go for buff. Buff or yellow. These are colors that are worn with morning dress.
Yellow?
Yes.
Crumbs.
Canary yellow.
Golly.
is very, very common. Commonly worn with morning dress.
Interesting.
Or buff. Or some might wear sort of like a light, I guess what you might call a very light blue, just sort of a baby blue. But if you were gonna wear it with a gray suit, like a charcoal suit, and you just wanted to add a vest or a waistcoat to just make it a bit more dressy, I would go with something like a light gray odd vest.
So now, if your suit were, say, charcoal flannel, what material should the odd vest be made of?
Just wool is fine. I mean, if it's not a three-piece suit, meaning sort of So if you look, you're referring to an odd jacket,
an odd waistcoat.
Then just wool is fine.
So worsted,
just a plain worsted dove gray.
Canary yellow really does sound pretty radical.
It does, but it's one of the traditional colors worn with morning dress.
Wow.
Yes.
So there you have it. Charcoal gray peak lapel suit, dove gray waistcoat if you're feeling sober and restrained. If you're feeling like you really want to make a bit of a splash, baby blue, yellow, canary yellow, buff, kind of in the middle there.
Buff is sort of like a light brown.
Yeah, it's sort of, but with a charcoal suit.
I just don't like mixing browns and grays and blues.
Yes, okay.
If I were going to wear a buff, for instance, I mean, again, it's worn commonly with morning dress. But if I wanted to wear it as an odd vest, I probably do so with a more casual suit. Yes.
Because brown is somehow
right
always more casual, isn't it?
Say, for instance, like a dark brown chalk stripe. You know, the dark brown chalk stripe fabric we had.
The famous fabric, yes.
Exactly.
By the way, what
we're
happened
having
to
it
that?
made. It
Okay.
should be here any moment, but
Okay,
we're having
good.
it made into a single-breasted peak lapel 3-piece. So something like that is a very dressy fabric. It's
No
just
kidding.
a very dark, rich brown with
yes.
bold chalk stripes.
Yes.
So something like that you could wear with a buff waistcoat and it would look absolutely magnificent with a light blue shirt.
That would. Now, that fabric, you and I were talking about that must be 3 years ago when we had a couple of podcasts with the fabric, remember?
Correct.
And I remember we were talking about it at the time and you were saying, oh, yes, a suit. And so finally, everybody will get to see that. It really is quite something. I'm not sure if the real quality of the fabric will show up on the camera because it's got to be touched to be believed.
It is splendid.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
It is by Fox, one of our vendors, of course. So I'm sure for those of you who might be triggered, we have plenty of it in the back room. Plenty of the fabric in the back.
Oh,
room.
still okay.
Of course, we can source it. We can source it. I think it's one of their perennial flannels.
Yes.
So we should be able to source it easily.
And it's something that you almost never see.
Right.
Is chalk stripe brown. But that particular fabric has a very nice hand to it. It's really remarkable, actually.
Yes.
And with a buff waistcoat, yes, that'll look really splendid. Now, speaking of waistcoats, fellow John Byrne Guitar, that's his handle, said that he really thought the double-breasted waistcoat that you were wearing a few weeks ago with the Prince of Wales suit.
Correct.
He thought that looked really very elegant. And I wanted to ask you, is there a time and a place for double-breasted waistcoats?
Well, they're certainly more dressy than single-breasted waistcoats. For instance, the suit I have on currently is a 3-piece suit, but it's made with a single-breasted waistcoat. So I think that the idea when you're tailoring a garment is not just sort of choosing a style. The style has to be in harmony. It has to be congruent with the fabric.
Yes.
So, the fabric dictates to a great degree what type of waistcoat should go with it.
Okay.
For instance, I wouldn't make a country suit, like a tweed suit, with a double-breasted waistcoat. Because the double-breasted waistcoat is more dressy. It's more of a city look. It's more dressy.
Yeah.
It's more of a city look. A tweed suit, I would definitely only consider a single-breasted waistcoat because that's more casual.
And yet, you could. I mean, it was done. You see pictures of, for example, farmers in tweed suits with double-breasted waistcoats.
Really, I haven't seen one. I have yet to see one.
But you reckon a double-breasted waistcoat is a city thing?
Because it's more dressy. Again, remember, it's a peak lapel, whereas the single-breasted is notch lapel. So the peak lapel itself, is just more formal, more dressy than the notch lapel.
It is.
So a double-breasted waistcoat typically comes with a peak lapel, which, in my view, just sort of in terms of sartorial grammar, if I could call it that, or parlance, it just suggests that it's a more dressy.
Yes.
It should be applied to more dressy fabrics.
So you're talking about your grays, for example, the gray flannels and blues and so forth.
Exactly.
And the double-breasted, should you wear a double-breasted waistcoat with a double-breasted suit?
That's really up for debate. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Again, the whole idea of a waistcoat is the primary purpose of a waistcoat is warmth.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then the second and sort of the less primary reason is style.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are those who suggest that a waistcoat negates the whole idea of a double-breasted coat because it covers it. You have two large panels that cover, and largely they obscure they largely obscure the waistcoat.
Yes.
And so there are those who consider them moot or pointless. I don't. I think when I can, I like to have my suits made in 3 pieces, which gives me the option of wearing it as a 2-piece or a 3-piece.
Indeed, yes.
So
yes.
Every now and then when I have the unction, I dress it up as a 3-piece, and I see nothing wrong with it.
No, indeed. And of course, the other thing is that depending on the time of year, depending on the weather, you can wear the waistcoat in the winter and not wear it in the summer, and the suit is pretty cool.
Correct.
I think that's an interesting question because you don't see nowadays double-breasted suits sold with waistcoats, but they certainly used to be. And I can remember when they were. But you're right. The trouble is that you don't see the waistcoat so much when you've got the double-breasted suit on. We had a question. Remember last week we were talking about the heavy linen of the safari jacket. And I think you said it was 500-600 grams per meter. Or
well, 550 grams thereabout. Yes.
So I've got a chap here called Sempi8151. I'm curious about these numbers people put on their handles because it can't be the year they were born and it can't be, their birthday. So anyway, there must be a reason for it. This chap, Sempi8151, says, can you use the heavy linen for trousers?
Oh, of course. Absolutely. Absolutely. And they would drape fantastically. Actually, I have quite a few in the workshop.
Oh, really?
From the same vendor, from one of our vendors, Spence Bryson, All-Star Weavers. They supply us the heavy. And I think I gave you the backstory behind it. It's actually upholstery.
It's upholstery, yes.
And we decided to experiment, and it came out really well. So we're having a number of sort of what you call mini Oxford bags.
The fuller cut.
The fuller cut. We're having it made in those, and they haven't come out yet, but I'm pretty sure they will drape fantastically.
So the linen can hold enough of a crease for the pleats.
Oh, well, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Interesting.
And it will hang like steel just because it's got that weight to it.
And they won't feel a bit like you're wearing a suit of armor.
No, I don't. Well, I mean, I haven't seen them yet. They're still in production, but we'll see. We'll see when he hits when he hits the studio.
So Sempi8159, the answer is yes. And if you want some, most welcome to apply at AskOkey, and we'll do what we can. Now, Bartle 1307 asks, what colors of hat would you recommend for the wardrobe so that you effectively have the thing covered? What colors of hat would you recommend? Fedora, he says.
Pete, we did a reel on this not long ago. It's still up on there. But I think I recommended 3 primary colors. Navy or midnight, gray, and brown. And black being sort of the fourth one, being sort of more of a formal, so like a black bowler or black Homburg for more formal occasions. But outside of formal occasions, let's say for your daytime wear, for your regular office suits or your casual weekend suit, blue and gray are my go-tos. So a midnight, what Optimal calls onyx. It's a very dark midnight blue, and then sort of a medium gray, medium charcoalish gray hat. Those tend to go very well with either navy or gray suits interchangeably. And then brown, of course, for your more casual jackets or casual suits for your weekend suits, your tweeds and things of that nature. So I think with those 3, navy or midnight blue, some gray between sort of a charcoal and a medium gray, and sort of a dark brown, I think you should be covered for the basics. And then if you sort of fall into the habit or the hobby of collecting hats, then obviously the opportunities are endless.
But if if it's fedoras, you're unlikely to go very far from the grey and brown. I mean, burgundy or something like that is a bit of a stretch, I would think.
Well, I do own a burgundy fedora.
Ah, do you? Okay.
I do actually own one. I saw one in Graham's store, and I was quite curious, and it's a very dark burgundy.
Okay.
Very dark. But it's something I would most likely wear mostly at night. It looks almost like black at night.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But burgundy, I think for fedoras, and I think your thinking or your reasoning being that fedoras being worn with business dress. Or to sort of come in a rather conservative palette or color palette. I can see that, but obviously there are those who wear suits, who own suits for purposes that go beyond business.
Indeed.
And you wouldn't want to restrict them to
no.
blue and gray.
But you think in terms of a sort of staple hat, it's the fedora shape that you would recommend people get, rather than a pork pie or a
well, again, for like business.
Yeah.
So if you're a business person, or if you're after more of a classic look, of course, a fedora. And then if you're more of the arty type, and if you're a musician or an artist, or something of that nature, something in the arts or creative field, then a pork pie.
Right.
Pork pie.
The Belmont.
And other. What is the thing that Frank Sinatra used to wear? Was it a pork pie? Yeah.
So
those styles are more popular with artists.
Sure. And if you look at if you go to the websites, hats are a real, how shall I put it? They're like watches. People get really interested in them. And they know exactly the minutiae of the different designs, the history of the designs, and the very fine points of styling that you can have on them. Interesting. Okay, so you've heard it. Midnight brown, and I would think a fairly dark brown, because you want your hat to be darker than or as dark as your clothes, don't you?
Well, sort of the way I look at it is like your hat and your shoes are like bookends.
Right. Yeah.
So if you're in my view, dark brown shoes are most versatile for casual suits. So similarly, a dark brown hat, right? So they're like bookends; they should mirror each other.
There you go. Now, we did talk a couple of weeks back, or a week or so back, about a certain person's socks. Now, we won't mention whose socks they wear or the upshot of that whole discussion, but we will talk just very briefly about AskOkey's new line of socks, and I think you're actually wearing a pair of them.
I might actually be compelled to take off my shoes.
We won't go to that. We can.
Well, of course, why not?
Everybody?
It's an opportunity to showcase our. So there you have it.
Interesting.
AskOkey.
People, it's a first. The Proff's feet.
It's a premiere.
You're seeing them, absolutely.
First
time you're seeing Proff's feet. There they are.
There you go.
In all their glory. and he's wearing the AskOkey socks.
Exactly. There you go. Do you have it, Captain? Okay, there you
go. Good.
With the yellow dot.
And we've got them in
several colors.
Burgundy, grey, brown, light brown, and green, dark blue.
Yes.
And I think green. And you can order them from us.
Yes. And these particular ones are shadow stripes.
Yes, that's right.
Sort of they're done in sort of two shades of blue, sort of a primary color.
That's it, yes.
And with sort of a darker, and of course they're all over the calf.
Right? Well, they're practically as long as tights. I mean, they really go very far up the leg.
Well, that's
the
whole point. They're over the calf, and sort of your calf keeps them from sliding down. But they are shadow stripes, so it's got the primary color as navy, and then the secondary color is this sort of what you might call, sort of.
Yes, a lighter blue, a mid blue, but very striking, and it's a nice change from just the plain color. like what I have, just the plain dark
it
blue
just
or
sort
something.
of gives it a little bit of character in my view.
It does, yes.
Just without standing out.
Yes,
so without
indeed,
sort
yes.
of seeming too. So for
Yes.
those who are looking for creative expression,
Yes.
or who are looking for an outlet for
That's right.
for their creative,
but no shamrocks.
Absolutely no shamrocks. I think sort of shadow stripes or other subtle patterns would suffice.
And no white socks. Everybody, AskOkey does not make white socks, and of course we don't wear them. Speaking of colors, very interesting comment from a chap called Sammy LJ5861. If you're there, Sammy, he said that the safari jacket color is actually what we would call desert pink, and apparently it's the color that they used to paint tanks and armored vehicles in the desert. So it's not exactly, you said it was lavender. Apparently, it actually had a name that was called desert pink. Okay, I think that's time for station identification. Okay, so we'll pause here for a message from our sponsors and an encouragement to like and subscribe, and we'll see you again in a few moments. Statistics show that AskOkey's podcasts are gathering a fair number of viewers, but they equally show that most of you do not subscribe to the podcasts. Whence this reluctance? Well, I don't want to pry, but if you enjoy watching it, perhaps you could consider subscribing to the channel. Nobody will find out. It's like ordering those things in plain brown wrapping of years gone by. Nobody will find out, but of course we will be advanced in our efforts to keep this channel going and bring you the sort of content that you, by all appearances, seem to enjoy. So please hit subscribe, don't forget to like, and we look forward to bringing you more of the same sort of content week by week. Bye for now. So here we are back again, and we're standing up so we can get a full view of Proff's latest creation, latest product, and it's a 3-button striped wool suit. Now, it looks from a distance as if it might be seersucker, but it isn't. It's actually wool from, I believe, Fox Brothers. It's a Fox Brothers wool, and it's sort of, is that blue or gray?
It's sort of a blue-gray. Sort of
Blue-gray stripe.
Gray stripe, yes.
And a very pale gray background.
And cream.
Cream-colored,
Yes.
okay. And it's sort of summery looking, so it's appropriate to the season. Spring and summer. And the 3-button, as you say, you get them made in a 3-piece, but you're not wearing the third piece.
Not wearing the waistcoats.
Now, what's interesting is the buttons are a sort of brown color, aren't they?
Correct. Sort of a dark brown.
So you can use the buttons to kind of perk up the suit, because if it were just light gray buttons, it would look a bit bland. And we've got patch pockets, as I suppose befitting the casual
nature of the suit.
The casual nature of the suit. So there we are. And what we were just talking about earlier, we have a notch lapel because it's not a dressy suit.
Correct.
Although it looks fairly smart, doesn't it, with those stripes?
Well, it's sort of, this is Fox's own interpretation of a seersucker, because the problem with seersucker is it doesn't drape properly because it's cotton. And a lot of people tend to struggle with it because it just doesn't drape well. So there are a lot of mills, including Zegna, and I believe even some of the Italian mills have tried to come up with some sort of a wool composition of seersucker, or their wool version of it.
Yeah.
So I think this is Fox's own attempt at creating something that has the feel of seersucker, but this is actually made from wool.
Yes.
This is maybe a little bit of cotton in it.
Right.
But it's largely wool.
And it's what, a 12 ounce?
This is got to be about 12, 13 ounce.
12 or 13 ounces. So it's fairly substantial in terms of how
but
it hangs.
But it wears cool. It wears very cool.
Does it? Yes. Interesting. And all of you who write in comments saying,
of course,
Proff's pants is too baggy. Proff don't wear tailored pants. He wears baggy pants. Well, Proff took you at your word and thought, right, I'll warn you, they'll be even wider. And these are what you would call the fuller of the full cut. We have a 24-inch circumference on the cuff, which on somebody like me would look, I mean, it would cover my shoe. But on you, it's not at all. It's not really it's not a drastically full cut. It's maybe a little bit wider in the leg than our usual classic. But other than that, I would say it doesn't.
But I love
shock.
them. They're so comfortable.
I bet they are.
Very,
I
very
bet they are.
And I just love the way it drapes.
Hang like a curtain.
Absolutely. So, I mean, this is certainly not something I would, it's not a cut I would employ in a business suit.
Right, okay.
But when we were designing this model, it was meant to be a casual suit.
Yes.
A playful, casual summer suit.
Yes.
We had them all made in sort of summer fabrics.
Right.
It's a three-piece. So the trousers, again, sort of go with this.
So this is one of the sort of with the summer lines.
Absolutely, absolutely. So these trousers are actually sort of, they're summer trousers, meant to be worn as a casual suit in the summer. It's just a very, very relaxed feel. Let's say you're going to the beach or to a picnic or, you know. Sure. I wouldn't recommend this for, say, I mean, it's up to you. I know you would probably
yes, indeed,
like this to a business meeting.
Yes,
but,
I would. Yes,
you know, for most folks out there, they probably want something a bit more conventional for their business suits.
Right.
But something like this, I mean, if you're looking for a fun suit to have in your wardrobe,
oh, indeed,
a couple of fun suits, this is just, I just love this cut. 24-inch
cuff. If you have the shoe size to match it, it works. I don't think I could handle 24 inches. I mean, it would cover my shoe, but in your case, it fits just fine.
And I just love the overall. I mean, I love the overall, the way the trousers.
Yeah.
It sits slightly higher up. Slightly higher up in the width because you need that height to sort of be able to get the fullness. Right.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
You know, you can't sort of have a low-rise trouser with a full leg.
No, you can't. No.
Yeah.
And the pleats really extend, don't they?
Yeah.
You know, they really hang properly. Great stuff. Thank you, Prof, for the demonstration.
Thank you, Pete.
Oh, well, good.
Thank you.
So, following on from with the suit there, these stripes. I'm just wondering, could you make odd trousers out of that fabric?
Well, I can see that, certainly. Yeah, why not? A little bit funky. But it has to be, I suppose, accessorized properly. For instance, if I were to wear this as an odd pair of trousers, I'd probably wear it with a navy jacket.
I was going to say maybe a navy blazer,
like a navy blazer.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. And we put that with these sort of oxblood shoes. And it makes a nice contrast, doesn't it?
It does, because it's a summer fabric, of course. It's a lighter fabric. So with a lighter fabric, I tend to go with either the sort of medium oxbloods or sort of a tan, like a lighter tans and browns, because darker colors would just sort of offer too much contrast.
Yeah, look, oddly, black shoes wouldn't
too
really,
severe.
Too severe.
You could, but it would just be a bit too severe.
And then we have a restrained single monochrome tie,
correct,
which again sort of tones down the busyness of the stripes and the fabric.
Stripes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're looking for a summer suit, you might consider this. Fabric from Fox Brothers. The fuller cut really suits, but you don't have to have the fuller cut. And the 3-button also, I think, works very well with that fabric. Really works very well with it indeed. The smaller lapels, and again, slightly sort of sportier look. The sort of thing that you would wear to the racetrack.
Yes.
Really would suit.
If you were a betting man.
If you're just going to go and watch the ponies. But yes. Now, something somebody asked, but I didn't make a note of his name. How many buttons should you have on your jacket sleeve? You have 4. I think I have 4. Some people have 5, and some people have 3. Is there a rule? Is there a convention?
I think the convention for regular lounge suits or business suits would be 3 or 4. 3 or 4 depends. I'm not sure, but it's usually 3 or 4. 5 is a bit more fashion forward.
Yeah,
it's a little bit sort of more fashion forward. You see that with more the designer brands and things of that nature. The exception for me would be sport coats.
Right.
Sport coats I'd like to have done with just a single button.
But a bit bigger.
A bigger single button. Exactly, because I just think sort of the multiple buttons are more dressy.
Yes.
You see them on more dressy, sort of your suits, your formal garments.
Yeah.
So for sport coats, I mean, there are those who have their sport coats made with 3 buttons or 4 buttons, really up to you. But for me, just to distinguish a sport coat from, I prefer to have just a single button. It's
interesting.
It's just a more sporty look, in my opinion.
And what about no buttons?
Ooh, no buttons. I mean, that is rare unless we're talking about turn-back cuffs.
No, I mean, if you had a sports jacket like this one has 1 button, but I'm wondering how it would look with no buttons.
Well, if you had no buttons, then you would have it would be sewn up all the way down, and the whole idea of having a button there is to be able to roll the sleeves up. I mean, folks rarely do so today, but they're called surgeon's cuff for a reason, because back then, surgeons would roll their sleeves up when they had to perform some surgery or some kind of.
And that was when they wore their suits while they were operating.
And that's why they're called surgeon's cuffs. So if you have them done without a button, I mean, you can't leave it just sort of open, right?
No.
So the whole point.
So you'd stitch the whole thing together.
You would have to stitch the whole thing up, which I mean, I suppose you could do, but it's just something I haven't seen done. Because even with the buttons, I mean, it's very seldom that we unbutton them. I mean, some leave a couple of buttons unbuttoned just to show
off. I know,
just to show that it's bespoke.
I know.
And those who ask me in the comment section, "Oh, Prof, why don't you unbutton your buttons?" Just to show it's bespoke. Well, I don't see the point. I mean, I think it's obvious that my clothes are made for me, so I don't need to announce to the world that I'm wearing a bespoke garment. But there you have it. I mean, if you prefer to wear it like that, that's why.
But do you have to have those working buttonholes?
I mean, they're like I said, they used to be functional back in the day when surgeons actually used them, or when craftsmen, not just surgeons, but craftsmen worked with while wearing in a suit, right? And they had to quite literally roll their sleeves up. It's very rare today that we have to roll our sleeves up in a suit for anything. So today they are largely cosmetic. So again, a lot of people see them as sort of an extra mark of fine tailoring, and that's really great. It's just really
well. Sometimes you can buy off the rack where they stitch a false buttonhole on
the last one.
No, what I mean is that they stitch what looks like buttonholes, but they don't actually open.
Correct. So they just run the threads.
Yeah, they just run the threads.
Right.
And they don't. Very often they don't run very many threads.
Right.
So they don't actually look much like a buttonhole. I think personally it look better without them, but that's up to the customer. We had a very interesting comment from a guy called Reese Daniels. Reese Daniels, thank you very much. Long sort of essay that the chap wrote. And he was commenting on the fact that people notice things. And I think it was, why do people notice the fuller cut and what they call the long jacket, which seems to be something that exercises the minds of those who dwell in cyberspace there. And he wrote a long post about this, and what he said, people notice what they don't expect.
Mm-hmm.
And because they don't expect to see what they call a long jacket, or because they got so accustomed to seeing shorter jackets, so really incredibly short jackets, by the way, and very narrow, as you said, shrink-wrapped legs, that they notice the wider cut, whereas if it were common, they wouldn't remark it at all.
Of course.
You know, they wouldn't go around saying, why aren't people wearing those skinny pants like they used to? Because it would be what everybody notices. I think this is interesting that the trends that come and go in menswear, you do get used to them, and then you don't notice them so much. So I think this was his point. Very long and very, I thought, very thoughtful post.
It brings to mind a video interview I watched a few days ago with Mr. Beast.
Right,
the
right.
very popular YouTuber.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Supposedly, he's got the largest account on YouTube. And he was asked how he makes his videos go viral. And he said he had what he called the purple cow theory. And his point being that everybody sees regular cows every day, black and white cows with the black and white patches, right? And he says, well, when you see a cow with a purple patch, what happens? It immediately invites your curiosity and your attention. So it's the same thing, It's a purple cow theory where this is not what they see. They're accustomed to seeing every day, and so when they see it, they tend to do a double take. And obviously, the first thing is to criticize it as not being proper, because
not being a real cow
or being a real cow, right? Exactly. They say, "Oh, that must be some animal from
that's right,
from outer space." But there you have it.
So we are the purple cows of menswear.
In fact, in this book, I don't know if I can quite find the specific chapter now, but there's a specific place, and I think I might have posted it on social media once. I think it's in Clothes and the Man, actually, where it talks about the proper length. Right. Clothes and the Man, where it talks about the proper length of a coat, and there's a visual here.
Well, that's Alan Flusser, isn't it?
This is Alan Flusser.
Yeah.
And there's a visual here that talks about exactly how and who should wear their coats and wear. And I don't know if I can quite find it now.
What is it about coat length, is it?
Right.
Yes.
And it goes through this visual.
Ah, there we are, yes.
It goes through this visual where it shows you exactly, there you have it.
Yes.
Right?
And even drew a man's legs.
Even drew a man's leg now. A lot of men wear their coats stopping right here by the glute.
Yes.
You see that?
Yes.
See?
That's
now,
right.
Your coat should go all the way down. It should clear the curvature of your glute properly, more than amply.
Yes.
It should clear your crotch. That's your crotch.
Right.
It should clear your crotch more than amply. If you look here again, that is the curvature of your seat, or your buttocks.
Yes.
See where the line is?
Yes.
It clears it by a good couple of inches.
Yes.
Now, when I stand up, I want you to hold this up.
Yep.
And look at these proportions, okay?
Right.
Look where this coat is cutting. Look at the glute. Look at the bottom of the glute.
Yes.
And look at where this starts.
And where the coat starts.
Now, this is the bottom of my glute.
I'll take your word for it. Yes.
Right there.
Okay. Right.
And look where my coat stops.
Right
See
there.
that?
Yes. Right there. There we are. Yes.
Just about an inch under that curvature.
Which is in fact a little bit shorter than what Flusser says.
Actually, it's even shorter. My coat is even shorter.
Yes.
Than what Flusser suggests.
Flusser suggests, yes.
Again, when you look at the front, look at that. See where the crotch stops? It's a good inch and a half or maybe even 2 inches below the crotch, right?
And yours is right about there.
Right about there.
Yes.
And so when people say your coats are too long, I'm like, too long based on what?
Yes.
Compared to what? So there you have it. That's the human anatomy.
Yes, right? And Flusser really...
And even when you turn around...
That's right, yes.
When I turn around...
There it is, yeah.
Look at that.
I'm just holding the book here, yeah.
You see that? That is the bottom of the curvature of the buttocks, and that is the line of the coat.
Right, so you turn around. Probably.
Right here is the bottom
There
of
we
my
are.
curvature.
Yeah,
You see that? And I have barely an inch.
Yep.
So this would even suggest that my coat is too short.
Right.
Compared to the classical length.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So these are the classic proportions. You can see them here. People scream, oh, the coat is too long, is an inch too long, is an inch too long, is 2 inches too long. And I'm like, based on what?
I don't know how they get.
I don't know how they come up with this.
Long.
So again, it comes to your theory of Pete. That's okay, you can leave it. It comes back to your theory of the proper cow. When you don't know, when you haven't seen anything other than, right?
Yes.
Everything looks like a black cow, right?
Yes, that's right.
And then when you see something that looks different, you're like, oh wow, that's a purple cow. It must not be a cow.
Yeah, it can't be a cow.
It can't be a cow.
Exactly.
So,
maybe something else. Yes.
There you have it.
Well, this chap, Mr. Beast, obviously has understood this, but the trouble is, I think, most men don't want to be purple cows, so they will tend to wait until
all
other
cows
people,
are purple.
Until all cows are, well, maybe 90% or 80% of cows are purple.
I've gotten a skin transplant.
That's right, yes. And then if you are say a dark blue cow, you can sort of walk among the purple cows. But it's not only that, it's partly provincialism, because if you go to different places, you'll see people wearing different things. And if you go to a place like New York or Los Angeles, you'll see a huge variety, and your suit, for example, would not necessarily raise eyebrows in such an environment where you get a range of people wearing a range of things. And speaking of that, we had a question from Olaf Prevsky, 8748. He said, can you wear black tassel loafers instead of Oxfords with a suit?
That's a very American thing. It's a very American thing. It's a very American look. Or bit loafers. Very often you see. I saw it when I was a banker on Wall Street. A lot of people wore black tassel Gucci loafers with their suits, and I think a lot of it had more to do with convenience than propriety.
Right.
So because loafers are just easier to put on and take off.
Yes.
So they just can take it off in the office and just sort of walk around in their socks. So I don't think I don't think technically they're not proper. Right. I would reserve loafers exclusively for very casual suits in the summer, for like linen suits, cotton suits, things of that nature. So I wouldn't consider tassel loafers proper with a proper business suit. But then again, people do them or people wear them because it's just convenient, out of convenience.
With gray flannels and a blazer would look fine, I think. Which is a casual outfit anyway.
Well, gray flannels and a blazer with dark tassel loafers. I suppose you could.
I personally would never wear the tassels, but I might wear the loafers.
Loafers, probably.
The tassels I feel are a bit much, but because they break off, they get caught on things. But I can see the slip-on, the loafer shoes being worn in that way. There was a trend in the 80s for loafers, and you could buy sort of what you call dress loafers in shops. I remember, and they were, I think you could say, commonly worn with suits back then.
In the 80s. It was an 80s thing.
Yeah, I think it probably was. Yes.
During the 80s, during the go-go 80s, it was a very common look, especially with designer loafers, Gucci loafers, Ferragamo loafers, and Hermes loafers, fancy stuff. Yes. But it was a very period thing. Yes. During the go-go 80s, the heyday 80s, and some still wear them, but I think that kind of died off eventually.
Yeah, I think it probably did. Now, you just mentioned Wall Street, and we had a chap who asked, he said, Prof, if you were an engineer, how did you end up on Wall Street? I didn't mark his name when I read the comment, but whoever you are,
Yeah, I think
this
I
is
saw
for
the
you.
comment as well. And the response to that comment, did you read the response
No,
to the
I didn't
comment?
read the response.
So
No.
someone responded to that comment that most investment bankers and traders on Wall Street have an engineering or math or science background.
Interesting.
And that is a fact. And the reason is simple. I mean, you know, I remember back in the day, Wall Street has kind of gone through several stages when in the 30s and 40s and 50s when it wasn't as sophisticated. Actually, the people who worked on Wall Street are people who couldn't get a job anywhere else, you know, especially the runners, right? They were sort of like essentially glorified messengers.
Oh, they were school dropouts, most of them.
High school dropouts. So, but as the economy evolved and moved more from an industrial economy, I'm speaking again specifically the U.S., as it went more from an industrial economy to a financial economy, the money followed, right? The money went from industry to finance. And obviously, the money always attracts the finest minds, right? And with money moving from industry to finance, the financial industry itself became sort of like very, very revolutionary.
Right.
It became very creative, inventive, more sophisticated. And so computers came along and sort of we now went into the era of technology and trading using computers and then eventually algorithms taking over. So, you know, who do you think writes these algorithms? Math PhDs, engineering PhDs. That's who writes the algorithms.
Right.
So Wall Street has evolved to a point where it's so sophisticated now that basically the human element is very, very minimal. You just basically have systems. So, and to train the people who run and design the systems, it's important it helps if they have a highly technical background. So engineers are highly sought after, and engineers, people with math background, or sort of hard sciences, physics,
STEM,
things, exactly, STEM backgrounds are highly sought after as raw trainees, and then you have to sort of go through the banking, you know, training in finance.
Yes.
But having that background in engineering and math helps. So, for instance, bond math, right? You're running stochastics, right? You know, you're running sort of, you know, permutations and combinations, and you know, you're projecting cash flows, and you know, running sort of Monte Carlo simulations, right? These are all sort of engineering math, right? But basically, it's now used in finance. Sure. So when you've learned all those things in basic engineering school or basic engineering math, it makes it very easier to pick up, you know, when you're
I get that
as a banker.
I understand that, but I think the guy was curious that was that because you arrived on Wall Street with the intention of leaving behind engineering,
correct,
and getting into something else.
Correct. So, I mean, it just happened that I suppose you could say a coincidence that at the time I went to business school, or I graduated from business school, that a lot of MBAs with engineering backgrounds were highly sought after on Wall Street for reasons that
and that was sort of the start of that era.
Exactly. You know, well, not exactly the start, but let's say sort of maybe the second generation.
Right. Okay.
So the first generation of those might have been in the 80s, right? 80s, early 90s, and then we were sort of late 90s, 2000s, right? So I think it just happened that I happened to have graduated from business school at a time where that combination was seemed to be a formula that worked for them. So and I think it still works. I mean, and now they're not just hiring engineers; they're hiring math PhDs. Yes. You know, they're hiring hardcore math, physics PhDs because obviously the models have gotten far more sophisticated and complicated.
Well, if you look at it. Great deal of the maths that you're doing in finance involves calculus, trigonometry, all that sort of thing. And so there's the answer to your question. Sorry, I didn't get the chap's name, but that's the long answer, at least to your question. And thank you all very much for these questions. They give us fuel, give us ideas for things to talk about.
Cannon fodder.
And we hope that you enjoy receiving a longer discussion on your question than what's possible when we're just typing in answers to your comments. So thank you all very much. That's all we have time for. We look forward to seeing you again next time here on the AskOkey podcast. And thanks, Prof, once again for joining me.
That was a pleasure, Pete.
Yes,
Thank you very much for having me.
Most welcome. Most welcome. My pleasure, as always.